Oh man, I'll tell you, the group 3 dog night. Oh yeah. Hello everybody, how you doing? It says it's live, so I do believe that is the case. We are we are all controlled by the machine. The machine's got us. And we're thinking, yeah, this is freedom. Sure. Bosto to everybody, speaking favor over all of us this Friday. Good to be here on a Friday and meeting with the Soul Tribe once more. Giving a shout out to David Barry. I know you got your children. Enjoy that. Hey, Matt Hatter, how you doing? How is everybody else? Chelsea and Kenneth, Gaia, how you and Paul doing? Matt, Cal, Martin and Heidi, how are you? So good to see you. Um, so kind of just a real loose format today. Uh, had some people write me, and when I had some few suggestions, and I thought, hey, why not? Uh, Thought it might be fine. Hello, Danielle. What's up? Good Friday to you as well. Favor. Paul Joe, good to see you. And beloved abstract, David Castle, hello. Peter, what's up? So yeah, weathered through the heat. Always an experience. It was hot, but hey, it is what it is. And according to the folks over at Maverick Observers Observations, and I believe that's right. I may not have it correct, but anyway, they've been tracking the North Pole, and folks, it's on its way somewhere, and I mean it is on its way. 20 months, according to their calculations, and we will start seeing some crazy stuff in the sky. I have no doubt. The programming of the machine is certainly interesting. If you look at what the programmers on the streaming services and what have you, they track all that. And it's very odd because they have two things that are primarily being pushed: alien invasion and something going wrong with our magnetic field. Now, that's all preconditioning. And when it happens, then you're going to have this cognition lapse. You're going to go, well, that's not normal, and it's not. But then again, you're going to have this almost this predictive reaction. Yeah. Wondering where the lions sleep. That's all I got to say. Where are they? Thank you for, I got interesting, lots of good emails from the Steiger Perspective last night. It was fun. Lots of going on. It's an illusion. Everything. It's like the duck puppy. You know, they've been discovered. Why not? So many other cryptids are getting certainly discovered, and we know Bigfoot now exists. Preemptive programming they're starting with. Yep. That's a fact. Well, Carol, welcome. Heading to Steamboat Springs. Well, excellent. Safe journeys. We're going to get together. Marsha, Trina, and I were all working to get Big Al involved and others, and we're trying to get something planned for this fall. And I know that there are like a dozen or more folks here in the Denver, Colorado Springs, up to Fort Lufton and all that area, up Fort Collins as well. So we may get together on a day, meet up somewhere, and have break some bread. I think that would be fun. So what's happening else? I'm just kind of scanning over the chat room chatter. Thank you for all y'all in the chat room. Thank you for hitting the like button, and thank you for being so likable. Going to Red Rocks in September. Excellent. Who are you going to go see, Hummingbird? Been there many times, and even went there when I had knee surgery. Yeah. Excuse me. My eye is really itching, and yep, that is a delightful place. If you've never been to Red Rocks, it is an experience. It really is. One of those wonders, and saw lots of good groups there. Wow. Anyway, but that's what this is about. So what else is going on? Let me see. Hello, Susie Q. How are you doing? Good to see you, hon. Leanne, good to see you. El Gatbo, good to see you. Emerald Ego, good to see you. Michelle, Divine Empress, what's happening? Bum. Annie, good to see you. Hello, beloved abstract. Mossy Man, what's up? Hey, that's something. La Jolla, yeah, beautiful part of the country. It is quite beautiful there. Really enjoyed it. Went there quite often in recent past. So I'm just looking at the that light never goes haywire until we come. Okay, so I want to share this with everybody. Give me a second here. I guess I can't. So this is the volcano up in Iceland, folks, and I'll leave a link to this. This is a webcam. This is what it's doing this now 24/7. The lava is built up inside the crater, and it is pumping out volumes and volumes of magma. You can see it. It is the Papua lava tubes through this area. They have a whole network. This volcano is alive. It has a complicated distribution system, and it's tapped in directly to the mantle. Doesn't have to go through a chamber. No, they got a direct spigot, and this is what it used to do. This, like, I believe, because I've watched this so much, that every 3 to 7 minutes, and it would have this torrent of lava coming out. But this volcano has evolved. Those who have been watching it from the beginning, you know what I mean. We've seen it literally evolve, and this is a further step in the evolution. It's changed. It's filling up these valleys. Yeah, and it is fascinating to just see how this is coming from our Earth. It is phenomenal. That's all I got to say. I mean, you look at this stuff and you go, wow. I mean, seriously. So anyway, thank you for all. Look, we always have the one person who likes to stand out. That's cool. As Lucky says, when a person, reacts to when you haven't even said something, all you can do is just love them. Just love them. Give them a hug. And that's the only thing you can do. So, yeah, lots of new real estate. These valleys, and if there's one particular gentleman and his wife, Guten Tag, and I think his wife is Nina. They have videos that they do, and they hike up there. And these are pretty good sized mountains that they're hiking up. And these valleys are filling up. The magma is moving. The lava is so fast, and it's like 10, 12 feet high as it's moving through. It's heavy stuff. That's all I got to say. Love is the answer. It is. It is. We can't, you just can't get all, how shall we say, your panties in a wad. If someone doesn't agree with you, that's cool. Diversity is the elixir of the experiment. It is. All of us alchemists, if you're a cook, if you cook, if you are a chef, if you are a wannabe chef, but are still a really good cook, you know. We are master alchemists. I mean, cooking, it's something that each human will consume. They'll consume that energy, they'll consume the essence of what they're intaking. And as the alchemist, you're the one that's actually putting it together. Speak over your water. It's like this water vibrates at a higher frequency. It is an exciting state. And when it enters my body, it's going to regenerate my body. All right. Cheers. Mm. Okay. What else is up? Like I said, I did not plan anything. 20 months. Ben Davidson's video, I think the man is spot on. 10 years. So put this in perspective, and we can give or take time, but let's just use this for discussion purposes. So 10 years is 3,650 days. That's what a decade is. Tomorrow I'll be 66. So you can figure out the amount of days that you've lived on this planet. So now we're beginning to see consistencies of everything coming together. So let's just say we have 3,650 days. What are you going to do with them? I mean, you've got this opportunity, you know, maybe it won't happen. I wouldn't take that bet. That's like, you're standing at the craps table and you got some guy going, you know what? I'm going to go against the odds. I'm going to do some boxcar willies, and hey, Richard, what's up? Hello, Lynn. Hello, woke dealer. Got your emails. James, what's up? Good to see you. And, you're going, okay, fine. I mean, the the odds occasionally are wrong, but most part they're usually pretty accurate, particularly if this data is of a verifiable. Thank you, little lemon. Appreciate that. Hello, Michelle. Magic. So the one question I have had in the last 2 years, and I get it all the time, how did I get where I am at today? What was this journey? Well, I think most of you who've been here, particularly I would say within the last 5 years, that journey has been pretty well stated. Maybe not in its entirety, but for the most part. But what I love to do, someone wrote me yesterday, and she said, it's rare that you ever hear someone say that they enjoy teaching occultism. And I thought about that. There's a lot of people, there are a lot of channels that, you know, teach. I mean, bring occultic knowledge out, but I guess they never actually, say that, I'm an occultist and I enjoy the occult. And why? Well, my journey has been one that I have been fortunate in seeing the highs and the lows, and have had favor in my life from day one. Day one. Now, I've had some, what people would say, some pretty crappy things. I don't know. It's part of the journey. I mean, my childhood was interesting to say the least. I had great opportunity to exercise what I instinctively brought into this realm. I mean, it was some pretty interesting and challenging times. And as I look back as an 8-year-old, I planned a getaway with my brother Guy Irvin, and planned to run away. We did, and of course, at that age, you get caught. But nevertheless, it was the fact that my mind was saying, I knew this wasn't right. I wasn't this. This was not supposed to be happening. And when you have that kind of inner recognition, as children so often do, I mean, yeah, I mean, my mom, and I don't hold any grudges here, put me in a mental hospital. Best time, it was a great time. It was uh, Children's Jewish Hospital right there in St. Louis, right off Kings Highway. If many of you who live in the St. Louis, who've lived in St. Louis, you know where I'm talking about. But it was great. It was a brand new place, man. I got 3 meals a day, which I didn't get with my mom and her husband. Um, and I enjoyed it. It was really great. Saw the St. Louis Arch go up right where my room was. And but the thing about it was that's when they found out that I had an above average IQ. Um, I was a gifted child. That's exactly what it says in the medical records. Um, Needless to say, my mother and her husband did not so much stick it because they said, well, the kid ain't got the problem. Actually, it's you. Adults don't like to hear that, as we all know. And the other part of that adventure, and I'll just share this with you because this is what, no form, just going to go with the flow. Um, so my dad, in his wisdom, and this is getting into a lot of memories, made some bad choices where particularly us kids were concerned, my brother and I. And sending us to our mother was one of those. But when he did that, he didn't realize that state laws of custody have different meanings and different interpretations. So apparently, he had gotten remarried and decided that he wanted us back. And my mom was having no part of that. And that fateful day in February, um, still living it, February 22nd. It's amazing how you can go back in time, 1964. And my dad kidnapped my brother and myself. And it was all in the news. We were in the national news. And it was a wild time, I have to tell you, actually, being physically kidnapped. And um, the journey began, and it began, and it's continued. Um, Due to, challenges that adults have, parents have, they're not perfect. Anyway, for myself, there was a period of about, I don't know, about 3 years. It was just a living hell. Um, Broken bones, and, it was just a bad, bad vibe. But eventually, the authorities got me just in time, and I've told you the story, had to learn how to walk again. And then I became a ward of the state. And that was a real trip. It was a serious trip. Um, it was an adventure. That's all I can say. It was an adventure. Taught me a lot. Taught me so much about human nature. I've told you this before. It was in a facility in Harris County in Houston called Burnett Balin, and you know, it it was a place of a lot of sorrow, but it was also a place of a lot of exciting things. And living in a state home for abused children, it has an institutional feel, but we got to go to the public school. And then there was a period when you get to a certain age. In this case, the trigger starts at about 14. Most welfare systems and child welfare systems are not designed to really take care of children once they get past 14, 15, 16. And I fell into that and shipped me off to California, and that didn't work out. And so they shipped me back. And that's where my emancipation started. And it's interesting that, June 19th is now a national holiday. Um, I'll go down in infamy. But so my adventure really started with a place called Family Connection. It was in the Montrose area in Houston, right off of Indiana and Commonwealth. And um, wow, I got a full baptism in fire of the counterculture because that's where the counterculture was alive in Houston. The Montrose area was the spot, and I was right there in the middle of it. And living in this halfway house, it was actually um, things were paid for by the United Way and other things, but it was where they had runaway children come, and teenagers primarily, and then they would give them a safe place, and then they would have a program to begin to reorient with the parents and the family, and eventually kids went back to the homes. But for me, that wasn't the case. I was a permanent resident, which was really cool because I met a lot of groovy people. I mean, and this is all going somewhere, trust me, I guess. And the counterculture is where it was there. We were called hippies. And most of my friends were at least 4 years older than I was. Um, and then the day came where I remember I got called to the counselor's office in the house, and they said, "Well, you can't live here anymore." I said, "What do you mean?" You know, I was 15. It was actually the summer when I was going to turn, 16. And I said, "Well, you know, you've been emancipated." And I said, "What does that mean?" They said, "Well, the state of Texas has made you your own adult." So that began the journey on that. And, I really know that the favor of my timing was because growing up in the Montrose area was the time to have done it. You know, walking around the streets at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, stoned on LSD, and never fearing for your life. There was never any thought of that. It was, um, you know, was a roadie for a period of time. I learned about entrepreneurship. Right at the corner of Montrose and Westheimer, we staked out our corner every Tuesday afternoon. There was The Voice. It was the underground newspaper at the time, and we would buy the papers for 15 cents and then sell them for 25. But typically, we were also selling joints, selling lids is what we called them back then. They were an ounce of pot, and you know, hallucinogenics, whatever we had available, what we were getting, and it was a great time. You know, the cops were a bunch of assholes, but that's just the way it was. And, having long hair didn't matter whether you were in California or Boston or Houston. I mean, the cops just didn't like long hair back then. And I had a few run-ins, and I had an ace in the hole though. And I'll share this with everyone. When the authorities took me away, and they had taken me to the hospital to get me stabilized, they had to take me downtown Houston to the police station so they could get pictures. And so, there was a detective Mask. I still remember him. And I was in the ambulance along with a doctor. And so they took me to downtown Houston, right down to the main jail. And downstairs in the basement is where they have all their equipment. They do the mug shots. So I was down there, and I can still remember this day because I was on a stretcher. And the cops saying, they actually had a drawing who was going to pick up my dad. I later found out, decades later, that that there were four cops that went out and picked him up, and apparently the drive from where he was working out to downtown was a good distance. Apparently whooped his ass on it. But in any way, I got to know this detective. He looked after me. And even living in the Montrose area, when the cops would, and they would harass me, and all I would tell them is just simply talk to Officer Don Mask. And every time they said, they just told me to watch my ass. Literally what they told me. And uh, I went on my way. So that is a little bit of the journey that helps form my perspective on life. It was a great time. It was during this time as well that when I was in the Burnett Balin, that each summer, 1 week for the boys, 1 week for the girls, there was a privately owned summer camp. It was called Camp Peniel. Peniel meaning meeting God face to face. It was it was a beautiful, beautiful ranch up in the Texas Hill Country. It bordered the property of Lyndon Johnson in his Hugh Ranch, and there was well over 1,000+ acres, and outside Marble Falls, Texas. And you know, I never had any experience like that. So we get in on this bus, and I really didn't want to go. I didn't, it was like, but we had to go. So all the boys go off to camp, and it turned out to be the most fantastic experience. Riding horses, shooting 22s, rifles, for marksmen, archery, hiking, and it was, and all set in a Southern Baptist setting. We would go to the campfires, and of course they would tell the stories of Jesus, and the whole thing, and how you need to be saved if you were to die. And of course, the first time I went, I was just about to turn 13. I was 12 years old, and I put up my hand and accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. you know uh I kind of figured at that point that the trip so far wasn't all that pleasant, and I thought, well, what the hell, why not give it a try? And but I really came to love these people that ran this camp. Gordon Whitelock was a great good man. He did so much for the children at Burnett Balin Home, and subsequently, little did I know that while I was living on the street, for 2 summers, I went up to the camp as a worker. And, you know, free room and board. Um, you know, I worked initially in the kitchen. It's where I learned to cook. Still remember the woman, Mrs. Miller, to this day. And eventually, I got to become a wrangler, actually working with the horses. And so that began that journey of the spiritual side. And it was real interesting because the time when I was experimenting with LSD and other hallucinogenics, I was also being very much exposed to this Christian doctrine. There's a story I'll tell one time later, but so that's when I had actually my first out of body experience. Was when you're peaking on LSD and you start getting into this internal debate, particularly as a teenager, about God, Satan, life. It's a heavy trip. And I was living with a guy at his home with his parents in Bel Air, and man, I was gone. They actually had to call the paramedics to revive me. I mean, I was gone. I've told you the story about, I now know who they are. They were the older ones. And, you know, kid at 16, I didn't know, didn't know anything about older ones, but now here I am, and I can look back nearly 50 years later and realize what was really going on. And so the rest of it is kind of became the journey. Eventually, I have always been an entrepreneur. I was initially trained as a drywall finisher. I was a member of the Painters Union and was making damn good money. I'll just tell you at that. And when you look at 1976 and you're already, and I think scale back then was 10.57 an hour or something. That's damn good money. And um, the thing about it was, I was exceptionally good, had a great reputation in the industry, and worked at some of the top projects. Um, I worked for the contractor I was with. We did the museum and bookstore at the St. Louis Arch, and I was the only finisher there. And what was so cool was that I would get there about 6 o'clock because the engineers would have to go up to the top of the arch, do the latch up, and just do their typical maintenance. Well, I got to know those two guys. And so one morning they invited me to ride up with them. Now I had to ride in the car because of liability issues. They were riding on the outside of the car. But the cool thing is that I got to literally poke my head up out of the arch on the top of the St. Louis Arch and look at that magnificent view. Yeah. Um, but life and destiny and fate had other plans for me. I got bored with basically, I was really good at what I did. And it got to the point where I was meditating more than actually focusing in on what it is, because once you get the techniques down, then it's just a matter of finesse. And long story short, it was by a very unusual, and again, fate, destiny, circumstance, I don't know. But I got introduced to the video industry. And the woman who was a vice president of Warner Cable back in the day, we got to be really good friends professionally. And she said, well, and I was still in my 20s. And she says, you really have an aptitude, because it was the first time I actually got to see what a studio looks like. And I learned about the switching board and all the other components. And because of her, that allowed me to get into the video post-production industry in the St. Louis market. And from there, a career that lasts nearly 17 years, I started one of the projects I was really kind of most proud with, and there were a number of them. But when I and another person, we formed our own marketing company, our own sports marketing. This was my client. As you can see, this is Richard Petty. This is my box I actually designed. This is a Sam Bass lithograph that was put on there. We did over 100,000 plus of these. We got a deal on Home Shopping Club, and from there are still collectibles in here with collectible cards, the die-cast card, etc. So that was kind of cool. My years in NASCAR were a lot of fun, got to know Davey Allison really well. Dale Earnhardt, Michael Waltrip, his brother as well. That was a lot of fun. And during that time, I lived in Nashville as well. Did a number of music videos. Brooks and Dunn were one of the first. Got to know people like Crystal Gale, Loretta Lynn, Dolly Parton. Actually did a project at the Ryman when it was under renovation, Grand Ole Opry. So all adding to the experience. And along the way, you continue to learn, you continue to gain, and you continue to, you make mistakes and you learn. And but it was fun. It was always fun. There were times when it was challenging, but fun. And when I got into the software industry, that was another change. Got into the thing of database management. And database management eventually led to what this thing that was coming out as the ARPANET eventually became the Ethernet and eventually became the internet. I was fortunate being at the right place at the right time again in Austin, Texas, when the Silicon Valley Hills was, we would call it. You had Silicon Valley out there. We had Silicon Hills in Austin. And it was an exciting time. I mean, the internet was wide open. It wasn't defined. No one knew what the internet was. Describe the internet. Well, today it's pretty easy, but back then bandwidth was a huge thing. AOL. How many of you remember dial-up? 56K, 56K, and that was if you had a good connection. And I remember working with a client, Whittle Communications, and how in a meeting we were dealing with in a very large project for the University of Tennessee, how I began to talk about, because my client was a client called Philips. Now, what was really interesting, I was the president of the International Television Association, and I was privy to really kind of top secret development work that Philips was developing in being able to get video compression to a one-on-one on a disc. That was a big deal because there was so much data on the video transference that we were using back in the days in the video in the edit suite when we were pioneers in the CD-ROM area, using 12-inch disc to store data. Well, Philips had broken the code and got it down to where they could do a one-to-one. That was going to revolutionize the industry, but it was also going to be the death of the industry that I was working in, which was video duplication. So anyway, all of this led to me being in Austin, Texas. There was a company called US Creative, and the two gentlemen who were the founders of that company, one of the founders had his son was going to Texas A&M and was getting a degree in computer science. And as a project, he migrated. They had a directory of creatives. It was called a creative directory that was put together for the San Antonio, Austin market. In that process, this project that he did for his final exam, they left it up there. Now, this was done a couple years prior. The weird thing was those who were really in the early days of searching the internet found this directory. And by osmosis began to put their names, because he had actually left a place where you could actually put in your company, your creative thing. And when the founders came to me and wanted me to turn the company around, the board voted me in as the CEO. Lo and behold, I had in my hand a treasure trove. I had over 400,000 creative professionals in a database. And the rest was history. The venture capital, we did our Series A rounds, raised tens of millions of dollars. And wow, that was before Amazon. It was before it all. And so Along this way, I then got into payment and got into what they call fintech, financial technology, and got with a gentleman who came to me needing help in developing an idea that he had. And the idea was revolutionary. In 2004, I was working with the Austin Software Council and the city, the mayor's office for the city of Austin, and we were working on bringing Wi-Fi hotspots in key areas downtown. And long story short, the gentleman had a beautiful idea of taking a device, a payment device, and connecting it to Wi-Fi and then bridge it to the internet for restaurants. And yes, I am very proud of what we did. We brought the first fully integrated enterprise Wi-Fi system to America called Pay at the Table. And it was exciting. We were innovators. We actually, the first facility was California Pizza Kitchen right off of Sunset Boulevard. And we were literally crawling underneath the restaurant, on top of the restaurant, pulling coax cable, because back in the days, Wi-Fi wasn't around that much, and did the fully integrated thing, and it worked, and it was beautiful. And then from there, so when I got the idea of, well, where else was innovation going? The phone, the digital phone, was becoming much more integrated in ability for storage. And so when I left that venture, I did for 2 years, I traveled around the United States, visiting churches and studying how they collected offerings, how many had cell phones, what was the age demographic of those who had cell phones. All of the data didn't exist. And from there, I developed the first fully integrated mobile giving application. And it was during that time as well that I began to see something about this religion that I was associated with. And the more I traveled, the more I visited, the more I found out that the church is a thieving organization. It was shocking, some of the things that I was encountering. But again, that was favor. The metamorphosis was taking place. I was about to go into my cocoon, my chrysalis, because that's what happens when your core collapses. And your core can collapse not just because of your religious beliefs, your spiritual beliefs, but relationships. I mean, people lying to you in business, deliberately claiming to be of a particular character set and just the opposite, but yet at the same time feigning complete righteousness. And I went, whoa, 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 wait a minute. And then I began to find all the problems in this thing called the Bible. It's a book of lies. It contradicts itself. One of the primary contradictions that I'll just tell you very quickly is this: how can you have judgment when you supposedly have perfect love? You see, that began to sink in back in 2010, 2011, when I began, wait a minute. How can you have this freaking thing called judgment when yet I can read to you and exactly, I'll take you where it is, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. It says that love never takes account of an offense, a sin. Well, then what are you going to be judging me on? I thought this cat was all about love. And then when I realized that the New Testament does not name a Christian God. In fact, the New Testament doesn't name a God at all. I went, well, wait a minute. And here's the thing, I'll show you something. You see, this is my Bible. I bought this Bible when I was running a Christian bookstore for Life Christian Center. Rick Shelton was the pastor. That's where I started working with Joyce Myers. This was before Joyce ever had a women's ministry. But anyway, I digress. You see, my life has been an adventure, crossing paths. I digress. At another point, we were going to be presenting at a tech investment conference, right? And we got the invite to this dinner. I mean, this luncheon. Well, I didn't realize that the keynote speaker was the governor of Texas. Didn't know. I was too busy. And so we were getting there late. And so I get up to the elevator and there's two DPS officers, Texas Rangers. And there was a guy that was exactly the same height I was. And I got in and the two Texas Rangers and highway patrol officers would, come on, you can get on. It was the next president of the United States, George Walker Bush. Here I am on this elevator, and he looks over and he says, "How you doing?" and introduced himself. I shook his hand. He says, "What are you here for?" And I was telling him about our technology, and he said, "Well, that's very fascinating." He reached in his pocket, gave me his governor's card, and he said, "Hope to see you again." And we got off the floor. He went on up to the stage, and I got my, you see what I'm saying? It's just interesting. But anyway, it's quite fascinating. And I have to tell you the time that I met Trump in 1992. They made the movie The Perfect Storm. Well, I was in Atlantic City that weekend. We were up there at a convention, a video dealers convention. And there was this new hotel that had just literally opened up, the Taj Mahal. So we get rooms, but they were really great rates back then. I had never been in Atlantic City. It was quite a shock, I got to tell you. But so we get in there, and there is a thing you can do in most casinos and their hotels, and that is you definitely want to get a player's card. But at the same time, you can say, well, I'm going to play this much. Is there any possibility of a free upgrade? Be surprised how many times you get a free upgrade. I got an upgrade. So here I am dragging my suitcase, behind me, and I get in the elevator and it stops at the second floor, on the convention floor. In walks this guy. I knew immediately who it was when he walked in. It was Donald Trump. And he says, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, great." I said, "Really nice hotel." He says, "Well, thank you." He says, "I'm pretty proud of it." He said, he says, "Have you been here or are you staying here?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, where are you at?" And I told him what floor. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He said, "I got a couple of seconds here. Let me just show you what your room is going to look like." And he takes me in the bathrooms at the Taj Mahal they're opulent. And he's telling me about the black marble that they put in, why they put it in there. And he says, "Well, I got to go." And he says, "I probably kept you enough," and shook my hand, and off he went. I went, okay, but 92, who the hell was Donald Trump? I just knew him because of the book he wrote, but what the heck? So there we go. Now, getting back to this. So the problem was this book, and I studied this book daily, religiously. I know this book. Problem is, when you think you know something, you really find out you don't know anything, because along came out, this is called the cipher. Now, this is a project done by modern day Hebrew scholars and linguists. And they went in and corrected the 70,000 mistakes in the King James Bible. 70,000. And what I found more interesting, because you see, now you're supposed to be getting all this knowledge. You think you're reading the book. You ain't reading anything. And the book of Acts. In my Bibles, there's only 28 chapters to the book of Acts. But lo and behold, we find out one of the biggest scams is that they didn't print the 29th chapter of the book of Acts. Good reason, because it spoils the story. In fact, you find out that the Apostle Paul is a murderer. He apparently seeks out and murders Pontius Pilate, throws him over a cliff. Then he goes up to the Druids. What the hell is he doing with the Druids? And settles in the Rhine country to live out a life. Not the story that we were told about him being beheaded. Now, if that isn't bad enough, then you find out that you are not smart enough to be able to understand what you're reading. So you have to go and buy commentaries, and this is one of 3 that I still own, Matthew Henry's commentary on the whole Bible. Well, the only problem with Mr. Henry is that he was a sick fuck. That's all I got to say. And the problem is that they put this sickness into their interpretation. And then as a Bible student, you're reading it. Now, my life at the age of 16, actually, excuse me, it was, 16 going on 17. You've heard the story where this is the Satanic Bible. For a made-up character, you got to understand he ain't got much to write about. But nevertheless, cat by the name of Anton LaVey, who, again, back in the 70s, when I was out in San Francisco, ran into this cat. So I've read his book. I performed a satanic ritual at the age of 16, excuse me. It was almost 17. And it was amazing what happened. And this book, I'll tell you the original one. The original one is much bigger and it is a little thinner. I had a roommate that found this and took it out to, we lived in an apartment complex, to the trash bins and went to set the book on fire. He felt that this was the work of the devil himself and burnt his damn leg. Needless to say, this book has followed me. I've seen it. There was a time that, at the beginning, I never feared it. I saw it as a dichotomy to what I had studied all my life. And, where this book says to pray continuously and ask your Father in heaven, who knows that you already have these needs before you ask. Well, then why do I need to ask? I never could figure out why did God need money? Seems like it'd be the other way around. But my point to all this is that it wasn't until much later in life that I read these now, and there is nothing different between this Bible and this Bible. Same construct. Well, when you begin to then realize that this is a virus. And by the way, they invented hell. I keep people, you should really, if you're having a struggle with this, when you understand how they invented the construct, yeah. But really what you really find out is that there's a God virus. Yeah, literally. There is a God virus. And this God virus is actually run by energetic beings that we call entities. We call them demigods. We call them demons. We call them archons. We call them archangels or angels. But the whole construct was founded on a principle that was polluted and inverted, because it looks like the writings of who the real Jesus is actually a woman. But we can't have that, because that goes completely against the whole spiritual hierarchies. And if we can't have that, then we become into the arena of the soulless ones. You're getting the picture? This is and what has led me to where I am today, including such books as, let me get this. Excuse me. The complete works of the Nag Hammadi, which has been a real eye-opener. So, because we've got that, we've got the Pistis and Sophia, the story. Now we've got characters that are taking on complete new identities and lives, which really screws up the whole concept, because we still don't know what this God is or who this God is. It doesn't seem to have long history. And that then leads to going to such places, for instance, with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Along with that, you have the complete works of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I refer to these all the time. They're like my reference library. And then when I get Christians who really want to get argued, they're so often so uninformed. This is one of the biggest clues that most of you who still struggle in that paradigm. This is the complete works of Josephus, Flavius Josephus, no less. So, what I have found out within these constructs is that you cannot buy into this thing, even with the Nag Hammadi. Because what I challenge every person is on this: if you're serving a God, my first question is why? But if you're serving a God who you don't know its origins, that's dangerous. And yet you're giving me this whole story of redemption, but it comes from a murderous, psychopathic, genocidal deity that has admitted to the slaughter of tens of millions, if not potentially billions, of humans. And yet we're supposed to incorporate that into somehow a message of love. You want to know why the world's so fucked up? It's because of these doctrines. They contradict themselves, because you can't have a goddamn savior who comes from a murderous entity. You can't. Yet we want to play church, we want to play righteous, we want to play New Age. We have God, well, what God? You tell me I'm evil. On what basis are you saying I'm evil? What basis do you say that I'm good? We so freely throw these terms, and they're judgmental terms. And they divide, they separate. Occultism, a true cultism, is not here to divide anything. It's simply to bring to the surface the knowledge that should be learned. And you should have the right to choose which knowledge you will accept, which knowledge you will become adapted to, which knowledge best suits your frequency. But we've lost that as a species. So there. A lot of you have been asking, so now you know. And the journey continues. I love it. Y'all are a big part of this, all of you, because you're adding to my essence as much as my essence is adding to yours. And I think that if there was a Christ, if there was ever a message of unity, that's what it would be. And I come to this point in my life as I approach 66 years, I am a spirit being. And as a spirit being, I may not remember everything, but I know I have more of a beginning than my consciousness will allow. My ending will never happen. I'm forever. This is but just one part of the journey. And the opportunity for me was to be able, could I actually pass the test? Can you get to the place where you can see that there is neither good nor evil? Good and evil are just the same line, just different extremes as to where you're moving the marker. There is no God that wants worshipers. The true God doesn't need worshipers. If there's a savior, the question has to be saving us from what? Ourselves? That hasn't worked out for tens of thousands of years. We seem to be blighted by that. And by all indications, the plethora of spiritual beings, interdimensional entities, surround us as a crowd of witnesses. Once again, we come to a point in the cycle. What will Homo sapien sapien do this time? Are they going to pass the test, or are they going to go back to zero? So, much love to you all. Hope maybe this answered some questions. Some may not like it. That's okay. We love you anyway. You know, listen, not everybody likes chocolate, but Rennie, isn't that true? But the ones who do love chocolate, oh. But you see, I wouldn't hold you in prejudice because you don't like chocolate. I'd probably be thinking, what the hell's the matter with you? But I'd never say that to you. I'll tell you, it's just the way it is, folks. And the variety of life is the spice of life. You know, it's spicy, baby. Robin says, I am that I am. Hey, I got that right. It's a fact. What? No way. Who wouldn't love chocolate? Exactly, Gaia. That's what I'm saying. You know, you're welcome, Joe Sapien. Appreciate it. It's fun. It is. It is. Thank you, Nina. Appreciate that, hon. Really do. Hey, Emperor X, what's happening? Hey, Jules, good to see you. Paul from Newcastle. What's up? So, all right, folks, I'll see you on Monday. This has been fun. Kind of going down memory avenue. It's not a lane. My memories are a freaking superhighway, you know. A lane? Are you kidding me? That would that the traffic congestion would be unbearable. No. We're talking at least 12 lanes each direction. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate you. You know, you've made the journey well worth it. All of you have. So have yourself a great weekend. Learn to continue to love yourself, because when you cross over, the love that you have for yourself is going to become very evident. Let that light shine, baby. All right, folks.